Hello, everyone. My name is Jameul. I am the chair of AES Atlanta section, and I would like to welcome you to our annual AES ATL location sound mixer webinar this year. So today we have Glen Trew, Alan Williams, Kevin Cerchiai, Matt Derber, Whit Norris, and my buddy Nick Mentor will be joining us soon. We would like to welcome everybody and thank you all for joining us again. We would like to talk about the AES Atlanta section. We meet here once a month. If you'd like to join us as a committee member or just participate, you can find us at aesatl.org. Also, you can find us at our social media sites, which is AES Atlanta section, Facebook. Also, we have a YouTube section, it's AES Atlanta, and also an Instagram page, AES_Atlanta. And we also have these nice, neat shirts for sale, $50. Has the logo, has the ATL symbol here, 2003 or 2001 if you're interested. So we have Glen Trew. He's the owner of Trew Audio out of Nashville, Tennessee. He is our moderator and host for today, and I'll pass it over to Glen. I think you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, there I was. I figured it out. Yeah, good morning, everybody. So Jameul, thanks very much for putting this together again. It's always very well organized, and here we are all here on time, including myself for a change. So we're going to talk about a section of professional audio that's often overlooked, and it's overlooked because it's kind of a specialized niche, I guess it's fair to say. And I think the AES is probably more comprised of professionals interested in studio music recording and/or live concert sound reinforcement. The kind of things that gets a lot of attention, a lot of press. People are around it all the time, so that's what comes to mind. But we're here today to talk about production sound for film and video production, which is very unique. I tell people that the XLR cables are the same. After that, it starts to get a little different, and sometimes a lot different, not only in equipment we use, but the philosophies behind recording. So the terms for this genre of professional audio, there's a few. Largely, they mean the same thing. One of which is location sound. Another one is production sound. So the term location sound came from, looks like Nicholas has joined us, right? Nicholas? Okay, good. The term location sound refers to going away from a studio to a remote area away from the studio. And often these remote areas could be a downtown city street. It could be a farm in the middle of nowhere, which I think if I've been in any one particular location in my career more than any others, it's going to be a cow field in the middle of nowhere. But that's considered location sound, and it refers to the term location. In film and video production, we always ask about, where's the location? It's like, where are we going to be shooting? But even when we shoot on a designated film or video production stage, which is often referred to as a sound stage, we're still self-contained. In other words, we bring in portable equipment and set up and go to work even inside of a studio. So for that reason, production sound for this genre is often referred to as location sound, even though we're in a studio. So location sound is sort of the generic jello term for the highly specialized area of professional audio. The other term used is production sound. Like, for instance, I'm a mixer for TV and film production. So my title is generally referred to as production sound mixer. and of course, there's other production sound mixers here as well, and boom operators, but they're considered production sound mixers or production sound boom operators. And the reason for the term production sound is it separates, it categorizes us in a different area than like post-production sound, right? Post-production would mean things done after the production sound. So production refers to the actual filming and recording, the different scenes in a particular production. In other words, on the set where you have actors, the director, the camera department, the costume department, makeup, hair, and sound, when they're there together to create these scenes, record on the camera and record on sound recorders, that's the production. Okay, so the sound people who work in that field are called production sound mixers, production sound people. Looks like I've got a flickering light. I'll take care of it in a second. But so that separates us from what happens after the production, which is referred to as post-production sound. Okay. And it's people always ask, well, I'm going to try to fix this. It fixed itself. Not for long. Anyway, so people always ask, how do you get into this? Because it is very interesting. I'll back up a little bit to say that it's one reason, maybe the reason it's so interesting is because when we're there to film or video or shoot something, it's because someone has decided that it's worth a lot of money to invest in it, because a lot of people will find what we're doing very interesting. So every time we go somewhere to work, it's very, very interesting. Maybe the people involved because of their celebrities or the locations, the storyline, the sets, the look of it, the sound of it. It's always very interesting. So that's a very large appeal, I think, for everybody here who works in this industry. It's very interesting. But then so people get interested in it. They say, well, how do I get into this field? And I made it a point over the years to ask my colleagues how they got into the professional sound for video and film production. And interestingly, they're very different from each other. Even though so many of us ended up in the same field, we often got there by very different means. For instance, I got into the field sort of by accident. I have a music background and was very interested in audio, the recording of it, the manipulating of it, setting up microphones and playing it back again over speakers for other people to hear, mixing it the way I thought it should be mixed, that kind of thing. That was always a big interest of mine. So I had in mind, like most people, music studios, live performance, sound reinforcement on a very large scale. That's what I had in mind. But my first job out of school happened to be at a television station in Nashville, Tennessee, which is my hometown. And this television station, which was not uncommon back then, also did a lot of production. Like now, mostly television stations do broadcast. But then it was pretty common to do production for commercials, documentaries. And the large show that I started with was a show called Hee Haw, a network show, music comedy show that was very well known at the time. So I got into it thinking, all right, I'm way overqualified for this. I'm used to working on a long console with a lot of faders, lots and lots of microphones here and there. And here I am often just writing the gain on one microphone that's on a boom. So I was really kind of, snobby about the whole thing. I'm just here until RCA discovers me, right? Well, I was very wrong. After just a few weeks of these shows, it occurred to me that what I was doing was part of like a really cool artistic ballet. where the sound people are working along with the camera people, the directors, the actors, the set people, hair and makeup. We all had to work together to create this art form. And that's when I thought, okay, this is an interesting aspect that I can't find in, let's say, sound reinforcement or music recording studios. Not to take anything away from those, but for me, that's why it became more appealing. So from that day forward, which was in 1976, actually, a few weeks in, I realized that and decided this is what I wanted to do. And I've never looked back and never had a regret. So that's how I got into it. And I'll stop here in a second and let some others talk about how they got into it. But other ways people have gotten into it, who I've talked to, a lot of people had no interest in sound at all. They only had interest in film production. When I say film production, that would include now, video production, moving pictures, feature films, television broadcasts. They had an interest in being involved in that kind of a production. And they just found that sound had a door open for them to get into production. So me, I had no interest at all in celebrities, the story aspect of putting together films. I just wanted to do sound. A lot of people just wanted to do movies, and that's how they got into it. Some people do it because it was a door open and it was a way for them to make a decent income. But eventually we all came in and figured out the profession, how to develop our skills, the art involved, and all that. And so that's how we got into the production. Jameul, do you want to should we circle around a little bit and have the panelists talk about how they got involved?
Yeah, we can go ahead and move along and introduce our panelists. And we can tell their story briefly before we actually get into the discussion of what they really do in the field.
Okay, so I'm looking at who has seniority here, and Whit, our hair color is about the same. So, and I've probably known you longer than anyone else here in the panelists, which we go back to the 80s easily.
Yes.
So Whit, well, first of all, I'll say Whit is he has a well-deserved nickname there, not only in Atlanta, but I think worldwide now, which is the godfather of Atlanta sound. And it's done tongue in cheek, but the truth is, it's well deserved because he's a great leader in the sound community, involved in the union, not only in Atlanta and Georgia, but countrywide and worldwide. He's known and respected. So Whit, how did you get into this crazy field?
Well, thanks for the kind words, Glenn.
While you're talking, I'm going to try to turn my flicker off.
Okay. Basically, when I started, I was a mass comm film communications major. Had no interest in sound, really. I wanted to work in radio. I worked at the campus radio station. It was back in the days where we still cut and spliced 1/4-inch tape. And from there, basically from school, I was recruited to do an internship at a production company based in Birmingham, Alabama. And we shot documentaries, industrials, commercials, and pretty much did it all. Nobody there at the production really wanted to do sound or location sound. We had an in-house sound engineer that mixed music for, commercial spots and that type of thing. But he really didn't do a good job on location. And because I had somewhat of a sound background working at the campus radio station, they started teaching me how to do sound. I'll never forget, John Hathaway was kind of a gaffer production manager type, took a 100-foot LXR, threw it out in the equipment warehouse and said, here's how you roll a cable. If you're going to be in this industry, you'll be doing this forever. And showed me the correct way to over and under a XLR cable. But from that point on, I started doing a lot of the location work, anything from bag car commercials to bank commercials to other industrials. And then from there, I went to do a project in New York, which was a film restoration project where we actually dealt with handling 35 millimeter film. We also did syncing up the sound of it, and we're transferring it to videotape. We were archiving old film for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And that was about a 9-month project. Then I relocated in Atlanta with some of the other people I had started working with in the production community. And we did a small production company, and I continued to do sound. And then I was asked to fill in on a film that was shot down in Mobile, Alabama. The sound guy had been fired or left, and I'd never worked on a movie, but I knew how to run a Nagra. And for you guys that know what a Nagra is, it's a Swiss recorder that was used for decades as the principal recorder for film sound. Started off, it was a 1/4-inch machine, and then it became a stereo machine, and then it became a stereo timecode machine in its development. But anyway, I went and did one movie there, then started working on other projects and other movies. And now my wife tells me I have over 100 movie credits on IMDb. So there we are 30 years later, I guess. But that's pretty much currently, these days I do strictly movies. I don't really do commercials or anything else anymore, which I have in the past, but I do 2 to 3 movies a year, basically. And Kevin, that's on the panel, he and I have been together for the last few years. We did Bad Boys for Life, is where we kind of hooked up for a permanent run. We just finished, we did Hillbilly Elegy that was on Netflix. Kevin, what else am I leaving out? We did 2 of the COVID episodes of The Walking Dead. We did, we did The Falcon and the Winter Soldier for Marvel. And currently we are working on a Warner Brothers movie called Black Adam, which it's based on a DC comic book character that's from the Shazam universe, if anybody knows anything about their comic books. And Dwayne Johnson, this is going to be his debut as a superhero or anti-hero, ever how you would like to look at it. And also have to thank Alan that came in and filled in for several weeks for Kevin when he had a slight injury. But anyway.
Yeah. So Whit, so your primary guide to get into this business was an interest in sound and audio. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I can say that, but I had no idea I wanted to work in the motion picture or television side of it. I wanted to work in the radio side of it, and I just fell into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So next, maybe at least how long I've known people, and maybe the length of time in the industry, is Kevin Cerchiai. I've known Kevin for probably since I don't know, early 90s anyway. And Kevin is primarily a boom operator. I've worked with Kevin. He's been my boom operator on several productions, and he's also an incredible utility person. And I can attest the fact that both of those positions, especially when they're run by someone like Kevin, can actually save the mixer. They can save the movie. They can save the sound department, certainly. And Kevin has developed those skills, to a pinnacle that very few have ever achieved. So, Kevin, how did you get into this business?
Well, I was always interested in audio visuals. When I was in middle school and high school, my dad was in the entertainment industry, but more as he was a projectionist. So I was a 3rd generation projectionist. So while I was in high school, we had broadcasting program there, and Dade County Public Schools has a TV station that they own called WLRN. And I used to intern there, and I never thought I wanted to do sound. I always wanted to be a camera operator or an editor. So I was like working on those skills, and Friday nights we'd go out and do a sporting event where I was a camera utility on there with Dade County Schools. And they gave us opportunities. And then I had a mentor at this TV station. They also had radio there. So you kind of switch around, you get a good idea of what you want. But one of the most interesting things that this mentor told me was like, pick something that you really want to do, you know. It says, now that you've had the opportunity to try everything out, you know, I ended up, you know, liking sound, audio. So for years I was just out of high school, and I never went to college, but I would do A2 work for ESPN sporting events, kind of go back and forth between A2 and camera utilities on this stuff. And then
and just to clarify, Kevin, for everybody who may not know, A2 is a term used to describe mostly broadcast type production, which would be A for audio, 2 would be audio assistance. So someone who assists the A1, who in the television production broadcast world is the sound mixer. Is that fair to say, Kevin?
Yep, exactly right.
Okay.
So, but my transition into getting into film and television, scripted stuff, in the union that I was in South Florida, was projectionist in sound, and they had internships available at the time. So I ended up connecting with this father and son team that we did a lot of commercials, and I learned a lot from those guys. And then one important thing that was happening, I'm from Miami, was when shows come into town, they normally bring their mixer and boom operator. And so I was a utility. I had a lot of opportunity to work with a bunch of different sound people and learn from a bunch of different people once I, was established in the business. So, but Miami, the work there was always on the beach, always in the sun, hot. You know, that's what people are coming down there for, the location. But going back to how I got started, it was really just to say a fluke, but it was not where I thought I would be. But I'm enjoying it.
Right, and just maybe I should have asked with this also, but Kevin, your career as a boom operator, where in the world has this taken you?
All around the world, pretty much.
Several times, as I recall.
Yeah. I mean, as far as China, I've been working in the UK for a couple months at a time, all over the United States, the Caribbean.
Yeah. All right, cool. So you got into it, but not specifically with an interest in sound initially, but more of you're surrounded with, people doing various film production and projectionist roles. And once you got in, then you realized that your primary interest was in audio and took it from there.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kevin. And now skipping around a bit, Nicholas, tell us about how you got started and why sound for TV and film, and tell us your story.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It's pretty interesting because I've been a musician my entire life. Growing up, I played jazz piano. So that was kind of my in. I just can remember just being a child, and all I ever wanted to do was art and music. That was kind of like my thing. But I knew that I didn't want to be an educator or an instructor, because my perception of what that actually was, it wasn't physically working in the industry. So I knew I had to move out of small place of Rochester, New York, in order to do that. So I decided to go to SCAD, and I pursued a degree. I did a double major in interactive design and game development, and also sound design. And that's where I kind of found the love for recording arts. And then I ended up doing my master's in sound design as well.
And Nicholas, for sorry to interrupt, but for those who may not know, tell us just a little bit about what SCAD is.
Oh, okay. SCAD is the Savannah College of Art and Design. It's a university of creative careers. They have a wide variety and gambit of all different types of majors, from fashion design to architecture to game design. And for me, sound design. I think what was really pivotal in my learning was the access to the amount of equipment and the knowledge and experience of many of the professors. And it was very tangible. And I think the transition made it a little easier for me because there were so many people that were always constantly working on projects where in a lot of those moments, if you decided to tap in, it was an easy place for you to make those mistakes, figure out what you did and do it the right way. So that's where I was exposed to doing production sound. When I went to SCAD, the only thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do audio for video games and work in the music industry. I had no recollection about that I could get into sound for film and television, and it didn't happen until I got to college. So, once I left school, I actually started working in the video game industry. I also worked in the music industry with, every artist under the sun, from recording, mixing, mastering, and producing records for them. And then I found myself pivoting because I wanted to explore more in the sound world. So I moved to Atlanta. I actually started recording audiobooks. And when I started recording audiobooks at this company called Listen Up, they had a bunch of, recording studios just for voiceovers, but then they also had a post-production studio. And I would walk by and I would see people working on films. After speaking to a lot of them, that's when I decided to make the transition and to jump all the way into production sound. So the way that I actually got into the industry was I just fell in love with the art of sound, just in general. I got really big on networking. I went to every conference. I went to every film festival. I did research on all of the programs that were here. That's how I found IATSE 479. And I just started reaching out to people. I joined the union. I got on Craigslist, and I started to self-educate myself on just all the different ways and all the different types of gear that people were using. From there, I started working on smaller projects, and I found mentors. I started shadowing people. And it just kind of evolved from there, just working on everything from small independent projects to then commercials, consistently working that circuit, transitioning into reality TV, small format, large format as a sound supervisor in Dante Systems, and then eventually, making my way into a production sound mixer for feature-length films and episodic television.
Great story, Nicholas. Yeah, thanks very much. So let's see, skipping around a little more. We've got two remaining here. My eyes go to front and center, Alan Williams. So Alan, I know Alan primarily as a boom operator is what I think about with Alan. He's also very skillful as utility, and he's an educator. He holds classes at the union local there in Atlanta to help gain people experience and understanding about what we do. Alan also has a vlog, I guess this is the correct term, that reviews equipment for people to have better understanding and existing products and new products that come out on the market. So Alan, what's your story? What was your path and interest that kind of got you started into what you're doing now?
Well, I'm very outgoing. So as a kid, I never met a stranger. I would go up and meet people and see people and everything like that. My grandmother was an amateur photographer and was constantly taking pictures of everything. So me being outgoing, I throw myself in front of the camera. Had the crazy idea that I was going to be a movie star when I was, barely able to talk. And as I got older, she got a video camera. And so I would take that, throw it on the tripod, start making the worst movies you've ever seen. As I moved into high school, I got into public access television, but my audio was terrible. And out of high school, I got a job at a video production facility where the owner of the company said, if it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. So he started teaching me about sound. He did videography, everything from corporate events and weddings to big, huge shows and, different, whatever people would hire us for, basically, commercials even. And he also did DJ. So I started to learn how to be a DJ. I started to learn sound from that aspect. He had so much gear inside the studio. I was constantly saying, now, what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? And as he got out of the world of wanting to carry all this gear, sometimes what I would do is I'd say, hey, I'll do that for you if you give me this piece of gear. And sometimes he'd say, oh, no, I'm not going to give you that. But I'd work him down over time. So that's how I got quite a bit of analog audio gear back in the day. But then I wanted to do my own projects with, making them sound better and look better. And that carried me, especially with the world of public access. I started getting my own video gear and my own audio gear and started kind of do my own little videos and that kind of thing. Over the course of time, I wanted to make a jump into production, getting out of the world of corporate events and that kind of thing. And I was given the opportunity to either enter low-level film as either camera or sound. And a longtime friend of mine that I've known for over 25 years named Aaron Siegel is a sound engineer, and he was getting into mixing, entry-level features at the time. So he said, I need a boom operator. And I said, sure, I could do that. So we started doing small projects together, and he continued to do them. And I continued to keep a day job, because at the time we didn't have the incentives in Georgia. But over the course of time, I was constantly working on projects in the background. I was also on my own. I was teaching. I was a professional PPA, a PPA photographer for a while. I taught classes regarding photography. Anything basically that I would get myself into, I would teach classes because I've always liked the idea of giving back. And over the course of time, the audio projects that I'd work on, the smaller projects, and that kept my interest there. When the incentives fully came to Georgia, I could have transitioned into either camera on a union level or sound at a union level. But again, Aaron Siegel brought me into the world of sound. So I joined the union. This is, I think, 2009. I went full-time in it, and I've been doing it ever since. I've also been, as you mentioned, teaching a lot. So pre-COVID, I was teaching classes probably every 4 to 8 weeks. And then as a supplement to that, I started a YouTube channel where I teach pro sound stuff, and that's called Sound Speeds. So I do a lot of that kind of thing on the side too. Part of it is reviewing. Part of it is just teaching techniques that, like you said at the beginning, aren't really discussed very often. It's when I first started out, it was very difficult for me to find people that would give me information. A lot of people guard their secrets. They say, look, I've worked for a long time to develop the techniques that I use. I've worked for a long time and I have fought through things and figured things out my own way. I'm not going to just give them away for free. Well, what I've started doing is teaching more of the basics, because we are now in, especially the world of digital, things are very fast paced. They don't move slow at all. And if you jump in at the pace that some of these shows do now, you're going to sink really fast. And a lot of the times that we bring someone in, you can't afford to have a third or a boom operator, sound utility. You can't afford to have one of them that is not understanding basic skills. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll teach basic skills, because I can't teach experience, but what I can do is teach you at least some of the know-how behind it, so that way you can start to polish off the rough edges with experience. So that's kind of what I've done. And the YouTube channel Sound Speeds is kind of a supplement to that. Originally started as a supplement to the classes I was teaching in the real world. Now it's kind of taken off, and it's become its own separate thing where I teach all kinds of different things on that. So that's pretty much my story.
Yeah, nice story. Very nice story. And speaking of education, I want to point out real quick that since this is an AES Atlanta presentation, Atlanta, maybe more than any other community that I'm aware of, is very supportive of their film and film video production people. Mm-hmm. Certainly through the union, which is maybe where I first met you, Alan, doing a class for boom operating there at the Union Hall. And so when the film production industry really started booming in a large way in Atlanta, there was not enough local crew to support it. So the union really made a big effort to get people trained and not just union people, but also would often invite non-union people, to make sure that the Atlanta community could handle all this production that came in. So that brings me to our other panelist, Matt Derber. And I do recall, Matt, that the first time I met you was when you were at the 479 Union Hall conducting a class on utility, the skills involved with utility. So in utility, we'll get into the different positions here in just a second, but the utility position is usually thought of as they handle the equipment. They are usually in charge of putting microphones on the actors, being second boom, which happens usually on a daily basis. So Matt, tell us about your background and how you got into this industry.
I came down to Atlanta from Michigan in 1998. Got kind of tired of my grown-up adult career and decided to get into the music business because I've always been into music, always been a heavy music person, critical listener. I got into working in recording studios. I worked at Trew Sound Studios for a while and All Good Productions. After about a year of that, I realized it was kind of boring, and I just didn't want to be stuck in a little room all day. So I started working in rock clubs in Atlanta. I started working at Smith's Old Bar as a front house and monitor engineer, and I worked at the Cotton Club and the Roxy and the Tabernacle as a monitor engineer. Did a lot of touring as a tour manager and front of house engineer and also monitor engineer. I did that for about 10 years and kind of got to the point where I just didn't see it as I didn't see a future in it. It was kind of felt like playing cowboys and Indians. At some point you gotta stop and grow up. And that was right around the time the tax incentive passed here in Georgia, and I joined 479 because I'd heard they were looking for sound people because we didn't have, like as Glen had stated, we didn't have a lot of crew at the time. So I joined 479 and I met Alan, met Whit, and Aaron Siegel gave me a lot of opportunities. Aaron would lend me gear and turn me on to indie productions where I could learn how to do basic stuff and kind of get up to speed. Then I started working for Chris Durfee as a utility. I did that for about 4 years. Overall, I was utility about 8 years. Utility to the stars, worked with all kinds of great mixers in Atlanta. And then at some point, people started calling me a boom operator. So I started being a boom operator, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And I've had the opportunity, like I said, to work with Alan and Whit and Kevin and a lot of great people in this town. And that's about it. It's been a really cool journey, and I see a great future in it still. I'm not going anywhere. I'm pretty much going to keep doing this till I can't do it. But really enjoy it. That's my story.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Great story. Great story. Yeah, I want to point out that I think, with the exception of Kevin Cerchiai, who he mentioned he was the third generation projectionist. That was his intro. Other than that, I think the rest of us, though we started maybe with an interest in audio, none of us had in mind or probably were even aware of a career of sound for film and video production.
Well, I never thought in a million years I'd be a filmmaker. I never ever thought I would, but it just totally got in my blood. It's amazing and can't stop.
Yeah. So I'm pointing that out because I think most of the membership for AES, the Audio Engineering Society, they're primarily focused on, like I mentioned before, music recording, music, sound reinforcement, that kind of thing, and are unaware of this other side of professional audio. And that was the case with most of us, yet here we are, thoroughly involved with it, making our living with it. And I think everyone's glad that they are. So just to point that out, keep that in the back of your mind. There might be something in professional audio that you hadn't considered that you might actually prefer. Yeah. So that brings us, we've talked about, the sound mixer, we've heard that term, boom operator, and utility, we've heard that term, A2 has been mentioned. So let's see, Whit, since you are definitely a production sound mixer, why don't you tell us how you see what categorizes a production sound mixer? What are your responsibilities, skills you're required to have, and so forth?
Generally, as a production sound mixer, and I'm going to speak about this from the feature side of things or television side of things, is that basically when I'm hired on the job, I'm given a script. And therefore, I go through and first I read the script for the pure enjoyment of it, and then I do what's called a technical breakdown. I look at how many people are in a scene. That will affect maybe how many wireless mics that I have for that day or that scene. I also look at to see if there's any playback involved. That would be somebody performing a song or music on camera. And I go through and break down that. I also, have generally I have a team of a boom operator and a sound utility. And of course I would bring them on board. And then as far as the day-to-day management of the sound department, that would be overseeing the equipment, making sure that everything is working correctly, that everything's up to speed. My own set job basically is to gather what the actors say. That we do that with boom mics, with plant mics that are generally hidden, and also with wireless mics that the actors are wearing. And my job is to blend all of these together on a mix track and hopefully make it seem flawless. Is that kind of what you're looking at, Glen?
Yeah. So well, I guess one thing that's also, there's XLRs that are in common. XLR cables are in common with all the genres of professional audio, but also
that's correct.
It's probably fair to say that faders are involved.
Yeah.
So
and up is louder.
Generally speaking,
except to a boom operator. To a boom operator, usually up is quieter.
That's right. Yeah, but faders. So the production sound mixer, as the name would imply, you're actually recording the audio sources, the microphones generally, at the proper levels, and mixing at least to a mono mix track. Blending the different microphones together for the most pleasant blend.
I'm gonna back up. Matt Derber said something early in his career when he had just came out of the music world and had joined 479. He said, Whit, the only thing that the music world and production sound has in common is we both use XLRs. Is that right, Matt?
It's a totally different animal, and the only thing that connects us is a string of copper. Yeah, totally, man.
not even that anymore sometimes, but
not even that so much. Yeah.
So that's something I'll point out for somebody who's looking to go from like a more common genre such as sound reinforcement, music recording, studio work, going into film production. It's almost a different language, different priorities. I think it's probably more complex things to consider. So keep in mind, even a 30-year advanced music recording engineer could go to a film set and still have a whole lot to learn, probably more to learn than they bring on with them. So you just have to really keep an open mind about the differences, and the differences are there for a reason. They're highly refined and developed over the decades. So go in with an open mind and then learn. Yeah. So Nicholas, everybody, your production sound mixer, obviously, everybody has maybe their own style or their own view of what their primary responsibilities are, how they go about it. So how would you describe the job of production sound mixer?
Immersion. That's kind of my view to sound. You know, we're not just sound people, right? We're filmmakers, we're artists. So I think that my approach in terms of what our department brings to the film is how do we creatively immerse the viewer even more in specifically in whatever it is that we do. So I like to take into consideration a lot of the scenarios and environments that I might be in when I'm doing audio. And that just kind of comes from working in a wide gambit of a variety of genres, especially when you may be in an environment that you may not be familiar with the day of. Certain productions, they'll change things on the fly, and you need to be readily available and prepared. So, you know, my approach to sound and working with my different teams is be prepared for anything. And a lot of that just happens from, you know, reading, speaking with the producers, understanding the creative, and, you know, just experience. You know, I totally agree with that statement about the thing that connects us in music is an XLR cable, because when I made the transition, you know, some of the soft skills stay the same in terms of like, hey, here's a fader, here's a gain knob, this is gain structure. But I think the application of sound is totally different. And I think that's where many people can get stuck at. So, you know, if you're looking to jump into this industry and get started, you have to be flexible. You have to have people skills. You have to be able to compromise, and bring a raincoat.
There you go. Yeah, I agree. And thanks for pointing that out. It's, and I want to also point out that here we have Nicholas and Whit, very established sound people. With this, just, you know, I'm sure that Whit agrees with Nicholas and Nick agrees with what Whit was saying about the job. But everybody has their own style, their own way of approaching the position. So it's good to keep that in mind. There's not just one way to approach this position. Yeah. So, and I want to point out that something that Nicholas said. Working with people, it's a team. Everybody has their own positions, but we have to work with the costume department, with planning microphones. And it's not just the placing of the microphones. You know, after a while, that becomes the easy part. The more challenging part, probably, and what requires the most experience, is just working with people, creative people who are trying their best to do their job well. And so we have to try to do our jobs well without making their jobs more difficult. And that's true with all the departments intermingling, sound to camera, sound to grip, electric, costume, hair, makeup, the AD department. I used to say that doing sound is the easiest part of the job. The psychology involved is the really challenging part. I think that's true to a large degree. So speaking of teamwork and working together, I want to go to Kevin for a second. And Kevin, please tell us what you see the position of boom operators being, and what you do, maybe how you go about it a little differently than someone else. And I'll preface what Kevin's going to say by saying that the boom operator and utility, but for now we're talking about the boom operator can really make or break the sound department. I remember a few years ago, I was doing a show. I was, in the interview process of doing a show, and they said, "Well, who do you want for a boom operator?" I said, "I'm going to get Kevin Cerchiai. He's available. I want to use Kevin." And they said, well, we really can't afford Kevin. So we need to find somebody with less experience. I said, well, if you're looking to save money, the best way to do it is hire Kevin and then hire someone else who is a less expensive sound mixer. Because often, I think everybody will agree with this, the boom operator has more influence on the quality of the sound than the sound mixer. Often is the case. So I just want to emphasize the importance of boom operator and, of course, utility also. So Kevin, tell us about how you approach the job.
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit, just talk about the sound team overall, because in production sound, it's 3 people. So it's a sound mixer, boom operator, and a utility person. And so on my day-to-day work, when I come in, I've already done my homework the night before just to go over our scenes of what we're going to be shooting for the day. And in the morning, we will get all of our gear set up. But my primary job is working the set. I'm always on the set. Communication is really important. I very rarely leave the set because a lot of the shows I work on are action shows, multiple camera setups where they shoot wide, tight at the same time. So I'm always thinking about how I can get my boom in to make it sound, great for all the different cameras. So,
yeah, and Kevin, I want to interrupt just for a second to clarify the term set. We're all familiar with that term, but when we talk about the set, we're talking about the part that you generally see in wide shots where you have lights, the camera, the actors, the director, and the camera department and people involved, very closely with the action and the actors. And when you see those photos, the boom operator is always there, right? Always there. Where the sound mixer is often, way out of the way, sometimes 100 feet away or more. So when Kevin says he's on the set, it means he's right there, 5 feet from the actors, trying, of course, staying out of the way, but doing his job. So Kevin's job is to be the extension on the set. So I'm sorry, Kevin. So go ahead.
So, it just makes me think about, all the different things when I'm on the set, just the different departments I need to work with even is, camera department to make sure, I know what the lenses and that my boom pole, my microphone is going to be out of a shot, working with the grips and electric department for lighting. Maybe there's a shadow that if I put my microphone over the actor's head and there's a shadow on the wall or shadow on their face, working with these departments to try to fix the problems. Communicating is really important. One thing that a movie set revolves around is the camera department. When camera's ready, everybody else has to be ready. We may have to put wireless microphones on 10 people. It takes a little bit of time. But if the camera's ready before we are, it's kind of, the production department's trying to rush us to get, all these people wired up in time. But, just communicating with the sound mixer, communicating with the utility, things that I may need on the set, like, hey, there's clunky feet. Can we fix the shoes that this actress is wearing because they're clunking across the set over their dialogue or someone else's dialogue? Can we put carpets down? There's a lot of things that are always going through your mind. Hey, what was that noise off camera? We're filming in a restaurant. Can we shut down all these refrigerators or fans that are running? And so just working with the utility, the sound mixer to try to make it a quiet as possible set. The booming part, that's like I always say, is one of the easiest parts. 10% of the job is booming, it seems lately. 90% is trying to get the set quiet and figure out how to get in there with your microphone so we can get a natural recording, great sound. And is there anything else?
No, that's good. That's really good. So now, just for maybe a little contrast, Alan, as a boom operator, how do you see your job? How would you describe your job and the important things about it?
Well, Kevin put it really well. You're basically the guy that runs the set. If you were to imagine the sound department as the sound mixer, whose job is to sit offset and listen to all the different microphones brought in. The boom operator is the person that will watch the rehearsals, determine what needs to be picked up to properly convey the message of the dialogue or the sound or whatever, to determine what posts will need. So if somebody is walking on what looks like concrete on the scene, and they drop something, but it's actually wood that's painted to sound like it, you can probably make a determination and say they're not going to really use that sound, because it doesn't sound like it looks. But if someone is talking on that and walking across that, you say, whoa, I can't have someone's footsteps walking across wood when we know that's concrete. So we make the determination to put down carpets to try to soften the footfalls so you don't hear that as much. And that way you can record clean audio over that, and then post can lay down the proper footsteps later if they want to. But there's a lot of determination that we have to think on the fly what is going to be necessary to properly convey, to properly deliver the post so they can make the movie. And that's what the primary job of the boom operator is sitting there or not sitting, but standing on set, watching and observing everything. And then, as Kevin said, making sure it's the quietest possible recording environment there. And more often than not, these shows now are getting very noisy. They're bringing out cameras with louder fans. They're bringing out super techno cranes that go zzz, and they'll use the Mini Scope 7 that Chapman has that has a loud AC/DC converter. They'll bring in just fans all over the place to blow wind all over the place. They'll do all kinds of things that will fight against us, but we have to coordinate with different departments on how to get that as quiet as possible, because just like your studio recording, you want to make sure it's a proper recording environment for sound. So we have a lot of challenges, let's say, that we face on a daily basis. And the boom operator's job is to basically try to make sure that the microphones that we use are going to pick up the sound as best as possible so that post can produce the movie or television show.
Great. All right. Thanks for that. So Matt, I realize maybe you're doing more boom now than utility. Is that fair to say, or what?
Yeah. I'm okay. Only booming now.
Okay.
Occasionally play as utility for friends if they need me.
Okay, good. Yeah, so tell us about your approach to booming, and also want you to continue by describing the utility position that you have a lot of experience with.
My approach to booming, like Kevin said, it's a lot of communication. You're out there on the set. You gotta have a lot of people on your side to get what we need done. I like to call it shaking hands and kissing babies. Coming in, being kind of a politician. Making sure everybody likes me, so they want to help me. That's about it. As far as utility work goes, utility work is basically the utility position is you run the department, but you're not in charge of anything. You're doing everything that the mixer and the boom op aren't doing. You're maintaining the gear, you're miking the actors, you're making things quiet. I like to tell people a lot of times I spend more time making things quiet than I do recording things. But it's a lot of communication with other departments, being cool with your costumes people and your locations people and your AD department to get help and doing all the things you need to get done. There's a lot demanded of a utility. Believe it or not, one of the most important things is taking care of your mixer and your boom op, keeping them fed, going getting snacks for them, making sure they got water where it's hot outside, and make sure they're drinking. Um, yeah, it's a very, very complicated job. It's a much higher skill set than a lot of people think. It's not really an entry level position because there really is no entry level position in the sound department. You have to come with a lot of knowledge and skills develop over time.
And speaking of that, I'll point out that you would think, since the hierarchy, if you will, would be mixer, boom operator, utility, you'd think that it'd be really common for boom operators to move into being a mixer, which does happen, of course, from time to time. But more likely, it's the utility person moves into the mixer position, probably because they're the ones that that they deal with the equipment more often. Sorry if you can hear my clock gonging. It'll stop after 11 gongs. I'm on Central Time.
One of the things about utility work also is you have to be able to jump in the mixer's chair. You have to be able to second boom. You have to be able to do all those things. It's a
right.
Super
so I think
critical.
that's one reason that the utility person, if there's a career change, a position change, it's often from utility to being a mixer. For one thing, if the boom operator moves up to mixer, like if the mixer is in a traffic jam or something, then that really interferes with the continuity of the crew, because you still want the boom operator there like they have been. The actors know the face and the person really well, of course. So it makes more sense. So often the utility person.
Glen,
yes, sure.
If I add something on that?
Mm-hmm.
To your point that you said earlier, that the boom operator is in many ways has certain responsibilities. If the sound mixer were, for example, need to go to the medic because they're not feeling well, or they need to step off to make a phone call, you don't, like you said, throw off the say, okay, the boom operator is technically the second in the department. They're going to become the sound mixer while the sound utility steps up and becomes the boom operator. You do that, you're totally throwing off everything, which is the reason why many times when someone when the sound mixer like that I'm working with, they'll say, okay, well, I'm not going to be here that day. Someone will look at me and say, oh, you're re-rating. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm most valuable on that set. There are many times that I work with utilities that they've been career utilities, and there is a transition that needs to be made, and a skill set and a comfortability, that you have when you move into the role of being a boom operator full time. And as a utility, it is much easier for you to turn to the mixer that you work with the most, and for you to jump in that chair, because you could stand up, wire, double check the wire, sit back down, work on something at either cart, basically, as opposed to the sound mixer who suddenly is now a boom operator transitioning, and then you're like, oh geez, talk to this person about this, and no, we already talked about this in advance, you need to work this out over there. So it's best, as Derber just mentioned a moment ago, it's best to leave the person that's the face of the department on set doing that, because remember, the sound department is a department that basically works with everybody else. They don't need us to do their job. Camera doesn't need us standing there next to them to put a lens on or to find their position with the camera. The props department doesn't need us to hand off a prop to an actor, but we need their assistance in quieting down all of their stuff, or working with us on camera moves, something along those lines.
Yeah, kind of related to that, I'll tell you a little story that I think is kind of funny. I was doing a show, and we had the same actors day after day after day after day. And after about 2 weeks, my utility guy was putting the microphones on an actress. I think it was maybe a teenager, but somebody that we'd been working with for 2 weeks. And the sound department, mixer, boom, utility, we work face to face with the actors very closely. And of course, the boom operator is always on the set, so they have that interaction. But so the utility is putting a microphone on an actress. She happened to have it on a different costume this time, and I wasn't quite happy with the clarity of the microphone. So after a couple of attempts, I left my cart, walked over to the utility cart where she was being wired and kind of assessed the situation, made a suggestion on where to put the mic, and walked off. And then I brought the mic up just to hear what the difference was. I heard the actress say, "Who was that guy?" So even though the sound mixer is the head of the department, the utility and boom op are often the ones, they're the face of the sound department. So I thought that was kind of funny. I made sure that she heard me laugh off camera. So anyway, let's see. So we've covered the different positions. Thanks for all that input. So now there's we talk about film and video production, like as if it's one big category, and it is a category. However, there are a few subcategories that tend to get overlooked. So I want to point those out. Probably the ones that get the most press that everybody knows about are the big feature film movies, big blockbusters, or maybe big popular streaming series or television network TV shows. But there's a wide range. For instance, film production. We call it film production, even though using actual film anymore is pretty rare. Most of it's digital video production where there's no celluloid film involved. But we still refer to it as film production. Okay, so there's the feature films, the ones that you go to the movie theaters to watch, which is became almost non-existent during COVID. Hopefully, there's going to be a comeback on that. And now those are often streaming on Netflix and so forth. There's that type of production. And there's a similar but slightly different production referred to as television drama, which would be probably a good example would be, CSI Miami or the network shows where you turn on the television and there they are through your antenna. That type of production is also a very demanding, highly skilled type of production. Then there's commercials, television commercials, basically. That's also a very high pinnacle of the craft. And even though I don't think there's any award category for commercials, there are quite a few. Well, okay, I see Alan's got he has an objection to that.
Clio Awards for that, for commercials?
As far as sound, as far as production sound for Clio commercials.
No, just commercials in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so even though there's not the acclaim and the award banquets for sound people doing commercials, even in the Cinema Audio Society, there's no category for the people who do sound on commercials. There's quite a few people who make a very good living doing production sound on commercials. Per hour spent, it's probably fair to say that that's the highest paid of the genre for commercials. Per day, per hour. So we should look at commercials as something that's it's certainly not necessarily an entry level into something bigger and better. It's big and great on its own. So it's commercials. There's documentary production, which I'm glad to see is becoming more and more popular. You see more and more documentaries available, particularly on streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, Yahoo, and all those. So documentary production is typically a small, smaller crew because they need to be able to move, quickly and be very portable and transportable and travel well. Then there's another genre, which is television broadcast. So when you watch the World Series on television, what you don't see usually is the lineup of trucks outside of the stadium, full of people who've been doing it for decades, who have refined that to the point there, there's no post-production in a live broadcast. What you hear is what they've done on the spot, which requires an immense amount of skill. So that's another avenue for this profession. Being in Nashville, which is, concentrated on country music, especially back when I was, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, music videos were a huge part of production. I've said it over and over again. I've done 1,743 music videos. And the pay was quite good back then because it was a new, very important genre. So the point of me bringing this up is just to say, like we shouldn't always have just music recording or sound reinforcement in mind when we think about professional audio. We shouldn't think just about movies when we think about professional audio for film and video production. And when one of those doors, if you're interested in getting into the field, generally called film and video production, if a door opens in any of those genres, my suggestion is to take it. For one thing, even if you aspire to do commercials, or you aspire to do the World Series or the Super Bowl, or you aspire to do some blockbuster, Star Trek type movie, take the doors that open in the beginning. For one thing, that diversity of skills will make you better for whichever one you end up focusing on. For example, I think an advantage I have of being what I half jokingly say is in the middle of nowhere, which is Nashville, Tennessee, is you pretty much had to take whatever came available to make any kind of a living. Because there was no tons of blockbuster film production going on like there is in Atlanta. No movies, no dramatic series all the time. There's one, maybe two now and then. So because of that, I would take sports broadcasting. I did a lot of basketball broadcasting, baseball and football, hockey, whatever came along. A lot of commercials. Like I said, I worked initially on the Hee Haw show and did Candid Camera and some others along the way. So the point of all this is to say, don't have in mind that there's only one way to get in, and you shouldn't make up your mind at this point in an entry level about which one you're going to end up with. You might find along the way that commercials are more appealing to you than anything else. So anyway, not enough about that, but just wanted to point out I think all of us here on the screen are probably most known for doing, TV series or, feature film type production. But there's so much more to it than just that a lot of our colleagues work in mostly. So let's see what else we got on the list to try to cover. One thing I didn't mention in all those genres is reality television. That's a genre all its own. And yes, we have XLR cables and even more in common, lavalier mics and so forth. Which is a good time to point something else out. The equipment that we use is always very portable, at the very least transportable in a cart. And because we go on location, we have to be self-contained. Even though sometimes there's almost always an AC generator involved, everything that we have has to be battery powerable. And which I think most of the recording engineers in music and sound reinforcement find that to be really, really odd. But it's true. All the equipment we use has to be battery powerable, typically with 12 volts. And this is something I'll point out because I think it makes what we do even more interesting. For instance, recording dialogue may seem very simple when compared to recording a very complex music track. However, it's technically, from an audio engineering point of view, it's technically even more challenging. And here's why. With music, it's typically at least a continuous bed of sound. And by the time it gets commercialized, often it's brought up to where there's, a dynamic range of maybe 18 to 12 dB. With dialogue tracks, recording original dialogue tracks, you have maximum peaks followed by absolute nothing, right? And that absolute nothing between the words, as I'm speaking, there's pauses with no dialogue, right? And during those valleys is when you're going to hear the effects of lower quality audio circuits. That's where you're going to hear the noise. If you have less than great converters, that's where you're going to hear the artifacts. Music recording studios deal with that and reduce self-noise by applying immense amount of power. That's why you have enormous power supplies with fans in different rooms sometimes for recording studios. But we have to have this extreme high gain, low noise, powering with very little current, batteries. So technically that's very challenging, and it explains why a lot of the equipment we use is surprisingly very expensive. Right. So much to say about all that. Another aspect of this that makes dialogue particularly challenging with music recording generally, and sound reinforcement particularly, because you're trying to counteract possibility of feedback. The sound source is quite loud. On a rock stage, people are singing at very high volume, and the microphone is right in front of the source. Right, so that's two things that don't happen together in film production. With film production, it's often usually people talking at a normal conversational level. But as everybody on this panel will attest, actors try to be dramatic often by talking very soft and even whispers. So whispers, when the mic is 3 feet away, that requires a lot of gain and very low self noise, and accomplishing that with low current battery power. So if someone's thinking that recording dialogue is easy to do well, I want to point out these things are big factors that make it technically and artistically challenging. So sorry to go on that tangent. I think it's worth pointing that out. Any comments about that topic from anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to what you're saying, microphone placement is so important, whether you're on axis or off axis, especially when it comes to, are they loud? Are they soft? The type of microphone that you're using, the polar pattern is important. So, there's a wide variety of microphones that you can choose in every instance, whether you're deciding to record dialogue, whether you're deciding to record effects. I think the thing that makes production sound so much fun is that we can use these all as different weapons or tools in our kit to figure out how can I creatively get this sound. So I remember I was working on a show called Live in Birmingham, Alabama, and they had this big action scene, right? So I knew there was a guy, he goes off this ramp, he flips the truck, crashes into another vehicle, goes to the back seat of his truck, pulls out an M16, and he's just spraying everybody. So just in terms of like production effects, I knew that the scene would have been, pretty dangerous for my boom ops or my utility to be close to that. So we decided to put plant mics in different places in the environment in order to get those impact sounds for post-production to build on top of and to sweeten in the end. So, just in terms of that, like, absolutely, there's so many different ways that you can approach it. And I think that's what makes it fun.
Right. Anyone else? No, okay, but I'll add to that too.
I'll agree with you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here comes Matt. Matt, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate that. Yeah, it seems simple what we do, using one microphone, but to be honest, when I was doing live sound, it was a lot easier to do a 40 input live show than it is to boom a scene. It is very, very technically challenging, surprisingly challenging for a one input situation.
Yeah. Alan, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's amazing how versatile a single microphone can be in the hands of a skilled technician. Because, for example, if you have two people, one person could be very loud, one person could be very quiet. You don't want a sound mixer going up and down, up and down, up and down, because then you're going to hear the noise level change and everything like that. So there's a balance you have to do with pushing the person that's quiet, backing off a little bit on the loud person. But then there's also acoustics that comes into play. And background noises that could be in the room, and you might have to cue away from an air conditioning that's really loud, or if you back away too much, it's going to sound too roomy. There's a whole lot of the science and the art form of booming itself in microphone placement, just like the AES knows with regards to like taking microphone measurements, or to any of the documents that you write and how you do studio recordings. There's a lot that can be said for technique, and microphones themselves are just as good as the technician that uses them. And if you watch a movie and the picture is processed green, you say, "Oh, that's an artistic thing." How many times you see handheld camera that makes you sick and is shaking up your brain, but you hear a live scratch on a movie, or you hear it transition from the boom to the live, you're like, "Whoa, that wasn't done right." It takes you right out of it. You're like, "Whoa, that's really, really a weird effect." I was just watching a couple of nights ago, my wife and daughters wanted to watch the movie Ever After. I was hardly paying attention in there, but I heard him transition from a very throaty lav to bringing up the boom, where there's now an echo, and then it transitioned to the boom as the guy got closer. And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" It took me right out of looking at my phone. I wasn't even watching the movie. But and sound has the ability to do that. And my wife, saw me and she says, "Alan, don't pay attention to that." And I was like, "What? You don't know what I'm talking about?" She's like, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I heard it too." I'm like, "Okay." But my point here is there's a lot that can be said for sound done right. And boom operators are responsible for making sure that certain choices are done right on set, as is the rest of the sound department. There's been times I've worked with Whit here, even or worked with Derber. I worked on shows with Derber, and we've listened to things and said, "What can we do?" Or I've not put a carpet someplace, and I'll be in the middle of booming and I'll be shaking my head saying I should have put a carpet down in that place because I didn't realize they were moving there. And then all of a sudden Whit will come over the private line and say, "We should have a carpet under them." I'm like, "Yes, I know. I just can't put down the boom to do it." And there's a lot that can be said for the art form of recording sound, because they'll do another take for picture. They're not often going to do another take for sound. So we got to get it done right the first time.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Al. Something I want to add to that is if I can remember what it was, is when we record, more and more, I think people assume that everything is recorded with a wireless hidden lavalier on the actor. And it's a fact of life that usually now, not always, but usually, the actors are going to have hidden microphones on them. And they're usually hidden under clothing, maybe in their hair, that type of thing. However, I think everyone here will agree that by far the better choice when it can be done is with an overhead boom microphone. Consider this. Let's say you're an actor in a scene and the person that you're listening to is 6 feet away, right? Or just you're in your own living room and you're talking to somebody across the couch, 6 feet away or so. I guess now people are 6 feet away more than ever before. Whoops. But so you expect for them to sound like they're 6 feet away. But if if you have a hidden lavalier under somebody's chin, first of all, imagine if suddenly that person 6 feet away sounds to you like they're right in your ear, or like your ear is under their chin. First, it's going to sound too close. Second, it's going to sound not very crisp. Then imagine that your ear is under at least one layer of their shirt. It's going to sound too close and even more muffled. Yet, I'm afraid too often, that's the sound that we hear on too many productions. It's become, kind of the go-to. So I really want to emphasize, I'm just preaching to the choir here, I know, but to the people who are less familiar with film production, that even though we use hidden lavalier mics a lot, and there's a real skill to making the best of them, it's always a compromise compared to a properly placed overhead boom microphone. For me, the goal of recording someone speaking or dialogue is to have them sound the way they would sound if you were standing in front of them listening to them speak to you, right? So there's a little bit of distance involved, and a lot happens in that distance to make it sound odd. So I just want to point out that we use lavalier mics often. They're required. Sometimes that's the only way to get the dialogue. But the overhead boom microphone is by far the preferred method. Okay, so I want to move on to equipment. I mentioned that the equipment that we used has to be very portable, very high quality, battery powerable, and so forth. But it's very, very capable in terms of audio fidelity, so low noise, very high gain availability, and now they have to have a high track count. So Whit, I want to go back to you. Tell us about your equipment and the recorders that you use, and we'll go from recorders to like the microphones and wireless mics. So for now, tell us about the recorder that you use.
I was an early adapter of the Aton recorder, which is the Kantar X3. It's a French recorder. Glen and I kind of both discovered this recorder. How many years ago has it been, Glen? 5 or 6 years ago?
About, yeah.
About, yeah. I saw a demo with it at one of our mixer events, and like their earlier versions of this recorder, I wasn't very happy with. It didn't allow you to do a couple of things that I thought were necessities, but they had corrected those on this version, and it is solid. It is capable of 24 tracks. It also, I'm currently started on this project with using Dante, which I have not used before, but with what I'm doing, it also has 8 faders on top, and you have also 8 trim knobs. It also supports 12 channels of analog. There is AES in also. I'll tell you what, let me do a screen share here, and we can look at my current cart that Kevin and I just built. But that right there is the X3. Rotor knobs on there, which is similar to what the way the Nagras worked years ago, the reel-to-reel recorders that we used. And there's a screen, and I think there's 24 tracks counted out there. This is, can I move on from and it records on.
Go from the recorder to the mixing panel there.
Well, real quickly, I record to an internal solid state drive, and also to 2 SD cards, and a external drive that is just what I call my archive drive. But basically, I record to do 4 recordings every time I roll the recorder.
Where's your external drive?
It's back in there. It's a very small drive. It's about 2 gigs, but it's a little flat SanDisk drive that's compatible with this recorder. Some people use some thumb drives, but anyway, it's got there's nothing very limiting about this recorder. I can say that.
Yeah, so you're recording then to 4 pieces of media: the internal drive, two cards, and an external solid state drive.
Yes, yeah, and the external solid state drive is basically my archive. At the end of the show, I will have everything on 1 or 2 of those, and I hold on to those generally till the production makes it through post production, because I have gotten phone calls. Oh, by the way, I don't know what happened, but we couldn't find this sound roll. Things sometimes get lost, even though everybody's very redundant these days. And what I turn in daily, or turn in for dailies and picture editorial every day, is the 2 cards. And the reason I turn in 2 cards, in case one is corrupted, they have another card there. The worst thing that can ever happen is that there's no sound on dailies. The world ends when that happens. But anyway, going on. This is the Cantor S, which is a surface controller that is made by the same company, Aton, that interfaces with this recorder. If you notice, these faders are magnetic and are sealed. There is no, like the mixer I used before this was a Sonosax, which had the PNG faders. And, there was always a way for dirt because of the faders to get into the mixer. Well, this is all solid, and even all the buttons are very solid on this. And the faders you can't see in this picture are up there, which are the magnetic faders also. They really did a great job with this. This was, with the Cantor S, this was, I guess, 3rd generation on the faders. The original ones were on the recorder. Then they had a smaller little mixer. And then they're almost as good as using a PNG fader. There's no latency anyway. But this proved to be, one of many times that it's proved to be great was we were out working in a desert, I guess you could say. It was a sand mining facility, probably about 400 acres of sand. We were doing a desert scene for the movie. Let me tell you, everything was dusty and dirty out there. And basically all we had to do was blow and wipe this off, and it was good to go. Let's see. You want me to just go down everything? We've recently...
Yeah, go ahead and talk about your wireless there.
Yeah. We recently made a transition to the Shure Axiom system. We're still working all of that out, but it's turned out to be very well, due to especially the RF environment here in Atlanta is very hostile. And with another manufacturer, we were having to do scans, and then you have to manually load everything as far as all the frequencies. And every day, I mean, Kevin, you can jump in on this. I mean, what will we spend 20 to 30 minutes just scanning and resetting 14 or 15 transmitters? Yeah. And then sometimes that still wasn't right and didn't work. And then sometimes things just seem to turn on in the RF environment and don't know where they're coming from. But with Shure's system, it will automatically change channels if it senses interference. So that's one way to get around that. Up here is our IFB, which is made by Shure, which we decided to go with that to keep everything, shall we say, under one roof. And here's their wireless manager. This is what figures out what's going on and picks the frequencies when we scan, and we can have backup frequencies. And
hey, let me interrupt just for a second, because it could be that the AES membership may not be familiar with the term IFB.
Okay.
So how are you using your IFB system there?
Well, that's for my team. When I say that, that's for Kevin, myself, and our utility. That's how we monitor and listen. I mean, generally I'm listening off the recorder, but if I leave the card, a lot of times I will turn on an IFB and listen, so I know what's going on, while I take a break or go to the trailer or restroom or craft service.
Right. I'll point out that the term IFB, it's another term that's kind of like the Jello term. It stands for interruptible foldback. Foldback being another term for playback monitoring or monitoring. So often in film production sound, the term IFB refers to wireless monitoring. And so it looks like you're using that Shure IFB for your crew to have wireless monitoring.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Anyway, the system seems to work pretty well. The only thing we're dealing with on that a little bit, it's only 100 milliwatts. And the system we had before was 200 milliwatts. So we've noticed a little reduction in how far you can get away without interference. Then each of these racks is 4 channels of wireless. So we have 16 channels of wireless there. That's a Furman. That's just something to protect the power on the cart. And then this is the system we're using now, which is a 12-volt battery backup that PSC makes because of the amount that we're voltage. Glenn, I'm pulling almost 18 amps now.
Wow.
With all of this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's why we kind of moved on to that.
Right.
Something that could deal with that a little better. And then here's an inverter. The IFB and the wireless manager are not 12 volts. So we had to have an inverter for them to operate, while the actual wireless racks themselves are 12 volts. And basically, this case was built by Nalpac, a company here in Atlanta off of Jimmy Carter that makes cases and sells Pelican cases, and they did a great job with that. And then the frame that it sits in is, excuse me, that is made by Jason Dozier, who's been building carts for all of us. He's a welder, metal worker. He's been building carts, I want to say, for 7 or 8 years for a lot of the Atlanta sound mixers and sound community. This little box up here is a Denicky GR2. That is the master clock time code generator for the show. That's what feeds this recorder, although this recorder is capable of generating time code on its own, but I prefer the GR2 because it's very, very flawless and very accurate. So this time code slates are jammed off of this. The jam boxes that are attached to the cameras are connected off this. And then even on this, I'm not going to get into the whole art of visual effects, but we have a whole visual effects team with their cameras that they call witness cams that's used for guides to build the visual effects. They also are jammed off that. They use our time code. So we're feeding time code to a lot of different departments for different reasons. And then the screen up here, basically from our video assist person, which handles recording picture for the director to be able to play back and look at, they generally send me a quad split so I can see 4 cameras at one time. And that's what also the screen's used for. And it's used for this little Windows computer. And also we have a Mac Mini on the card also that's stored in the depths. Well, actually, we just moved it out to here yesterday. Kevin and I did that in some of our free time.
Yeah, that looks really great. I particularly like that you've gone, instead of just continuing to go up and up and up and up and have a really, really tall cart, you've now gone a little wider.
Yeah, and it's not that much wider than the previous cart, Glenn, with the base and everything. It's only maybe 6 or 8 inches.
Not even. Wider, I think it's 5 or 6 inches.
Yeah. And
that's fantastic.
But, if we continue to go higher and higher, I'm going to have a cart that's taller than I am, and it's going to become unstable and turn over. Yeah. I felt like unless you provided a wider base, but Kevin actually came up with the idea to do side by side on that.
And Glenn, just so you know, the idea came from in the shop, your little tool chests in the back of the shop.
Oh, yeah.
I looked at that and I'm like, those are almost rack mountable, and that's where that idea came from.
Ah, okay. Well, that was a good idea. I really like that.
And just to say, this is the back room at Trew Audio that Glenn allows us to work on our carts and build our carts and repair our carts there in the shop and prep for shows, which it's kind of handy when you've got a you've got an engineer right there that can make you a whatever cable you need, or you can buy it off the shelf if possible. But when you're expanding your cart and updating it, it's a great shop to be able to do, a great space to be able to do that in. And let's see, I'll find one more picture. Let me stop sharing right now.
Actually,
this is
on
a
that previous one with there was an A10. It looked like right above your Kantara as well. It looked like the A10 receiver.
Yeah, you are correct. For wiring the actors, we basically have the Shure system, and I didn't know you could actually even see that, but I can bring it back up. We have a receiver on there that's the A10. It's right there. The Sound Devices now owns Audio Limited. And we've probably been using this for 2 to 3 years, if not more. But that's for our wireless booms. Pretty much everything is wireless these days. There are no more duplex cables or XLRs for the most part, except on our Voice of God system. But
I was gonna say, one thing that changed on our cart with the new Shure equipment is that we're using Dante now, and but we're also redundant analog outputs into the recorder just in case there's a problem with our Dante network, which we've had a little.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's everything is networked, and all those 16 channels go right into the machine, into the recorder via an Ethernet cable.
Yeah. And,
all right, thanks, Whit. That's it's very. I remember we talked about this idea. I think this might be the first time I've seen it, complete like that. And I will point out, just to give people an idea of how to learn more about the industry and all. Yes, I do. In fact, my main production now, I've finally admitted that I'm retired from production sound. After 40 years doing it, 40 plus, I'm retired. Yeah, thanks. But it's not that I don't feel the addiction still, but so far I'm successfully.
Well, you will come and cover me, right, Glenn?
That's right. You get a dentist appointment, and I'll be there.
Okay.
Or whatever else comes up. Yeah.
Glenn, there's a house show that just came out on BET. It's called The Encore.
Okay.
And we had 3 Pix recorders. We had 2 Yamahas, CL5s. We had 6 32 channel Rios, and it was a full Dante system, RF over fiber. And we literally rigged up this entire house with a whole bunch of antennas. Anywhere on the property that talent was able to go, we were able to hear them, not just on their wireless microphones, but we had plant mics all around the house, a variety of shotguns, PZMs, short shotguns, cost 11s. And also we had 5 sound mixers, ENG mixers on the floor at the same time.
Wow.
It was a crazy show. And I think something that kind of got me prepared for this was just working on a variety of different types of shows, going from docuseries to feature-length films to reality shows. You get to touch a lot of different types of gear. And I think something that kind of makes this position interesting as well is sometimes when you work on shows, you don't always get to choose the equipment that you use, because you might be filling in for somebody, or there might be a budget restriction, or you might be coming in for the second season of a show and they already have something that they purchased from a vendor somewhere else. So I've got a couple of pictures I definitely want to show you guys.
Yeah, please show them. Yeah,
what this looked like. So right here, here's my audio room. This was actually in the garage of the house. And as you can see, I've got 2 CL5s. The way they wanted it set up was at first a redundancy, but just in terms of, my workflow, because I had so many cast members, I actually routed all of my cast members over here on the left. And then I put all my plant mics that were all around the house on the right, because I only knew that there were certain times of the day that I was using it. So I wouldn't have to constantly flip between faders over and over again. I could just take one step over and I knew where everything was at. And then, here's another view of what this looks like. And then just in terms of IFBs, in foldback, I had to not only record all of the audio from the talent, from the house, but I also had to record the sends from each of my E&G mixers. And then I had to go back and send the audio back out to the control room to all of the producers and everybody that was doing story. In addition to that, they had their own separate setup in a following room where they were able to control things as well. So here's what the control room looks like. Let me see if I can find this. So here's their control room. And as you can see, they have their own recorders for video. They had their own audio consoles as well. And they literally were able to listen to every single isolated track for all of the talent. And then on the main monitor speakers, I was able to send sub mixes of specific things that the producers wanted. So sometimes they only wanted to hear people in the recording studio. Sometimes they only wanted to hear people in certain rooms. Sometimes they only wanted to hear certain microphones. So on the fly, I had to accommodate that, but I also had to create a system that was intuitive where they would be able to do it themselves without asking me. This build took a while. It took a while. We had a very large sound team. It was a 24-hour show. I was the A1 during the day. There was another A1 that came in at night. We had A1s on the weekend. I had 2 A2s on deck at all times on both the morning shift and night shift, and 4 to 5 E&G mixers for any coverage if we had any RF issues, or maybe somebody takes their microphone off and throws it on the ground. Well, guess what? I got a guy on the ground that can pull a boom pole out and still get that audio. So communication is super important. So, when you get into large format systems like this, it's much easier to get to this stage when you're dealing with a lot of different microphones and frequencies when you've done smaller productions. Because when you can break down the issue all the way down to just one microphone in that signal flow, just understanding how this one piece of audio goes from point A to point B will save you every single time. It will save you every single time. So, even if you're working on a smaller show, it's always great to take notes. It's always good to write things down. It's always good to be organized. It's always good to communicate. And especially when you're dealing with this amount of people, you want to have a team that knows your personality. And you have to be able to work with different personality types. Because when you're under pressure and you're getting yelled at, the last thing that you want to do is have a conflict within your department. When you have to work with negative energy, it makes the job terrible.
That's right. There's that psychology part I was talking about. Yeah.
You did a great job with how you put that together, by the way.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a great job.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, at some point, I don't think we have time now, but at some point I want to talk to you about the RF over fiber. Because that's something that's going to be, I think we'll see more and more of as the technology develops. Yeah.
Hey, Glenn, I just want to share one more picture. It's not a great picture of the follow cart, but this was Miami Beach, I believe, on Bad Boys for Life. But we had and also you can check the time code is the same on each down to the frame. When you take a picture, you can verify that. But this is the follow card up here. There's slots to hold all of the Comtex. Comtex are what we pass out. and it's become the term like Kleenex. It's a tissue, but everybody calls them Kleenexes, even though it might be another brand. But Comtech is generally the more popular one that the producers, the directors, script supervisors, follow focus pullers, anybody that needs to listen to the dialogue, we hand these receivers out with headphones. Then here's the drawers that keep a lot of our equipment. This appears a great workspace. And yes, I do have the world's largest follow card, I think. Or Kevin, who competes with me? Somebody has a heavier one, I think. Bill Kaplan, maybe.
Rich used to have a big one too.
Okay, yeah. But we can carry every accessory for the most part that we have. And it's great to have everything right there. Keeps people from having to run to the truck or trailer. And let's see, I'll go, let me quit this and I'll do just to show you the life of the sound department. I'll show one other picture here. Hold on. Let's see.
While Whit's looking around, you know, our sets, you know, we're not in a clean environment ever. If we're on stage, it's not even clean. You know, working with COVID protocols right now, you know, we're all like subject to 3 times a week COVID testing, plus KN95s on stage. This past week, Whit and I were down, and if anyone knows where Roberta, Georgia is, it's about 100 miles just south and a little west of Atlanta, in this sand pit. And, you know, very challenging with the heat that we had and having to wear a mask outside. You know, we're not breaking for lunches lately just to get a shorter day in. But, you know, those are some of the challenges, you know, that we're dealing with. You know, it's just not like show up on a set and be ready to work. You know, we're having to load equipment into 4-wheel drive gators with a trailer, humping stuff through sand and mud. We had rain down there this week, you know, protecting our equipment from the elements that are out there. I mean, that was a big part of the job this week, was just trying to stay sane, you know, during this, you know, everybody on the whole crew was.
Yeah, and that's the name Location Sound. Yeah. So, Whit, did you find that that picture you're looking for?
Yeah. Here we go. This is our typical life. There's the follow cart. This is my older recording cart and the chair, and living under a Easy Up. Generally, anytime we're outside, we have Easy Up for protection from sun and also rain. But that is wherever we shoot. That's what our setup looks like. Easy Up and usually the 2 carts underneath. Although this past week we had the gator in the trailer, so we left my cart on. We would pull the other carts off, and I would stay, and then we would put the Easy Up over the trailer.
You also remote your antennas.
Yeah,
everybody. I hate to cut us short, but we are almost out of time. I think we're down to about 5 minutes. We all enjoyed you guys coming, Matt, Nick, Alan, Kevin, and Glenn for moderating. Hopefully we can get you guys back on our next one. Before we close, is there any information that you would like to share with our audience on how to contact you, any training, or any, if you would like them to contact you directly by email, if they have any specific questions, because you guys covered a lot of bases and there's a lot more bases to go on the topic of location sound. So got a couple minutes, go ahead, share.
Yeah, I can give my email out, which is simply Glen, Glen, at trewaudio.com. And feel free to email me. I miss emails now and then, so email me 2 or 3 times if you need to. If you have questions, that's fine. Also want to point out that I have a store there in Atlanta. This is not to plug the store, but just to let you know that there's a place there. You can come to Trew Audio, browse the showroom, check out the equipment, talk to the people there. Often it's a bit of a hangout too for people in the industry. So Trew Audio, TREW. You can get on the website and find the Atlanta address. Be glad to have you over there.
Real quick, what I'd like to recommend, there was a book that was published this year that's become the new production sound Bible. It was by Patricia, who's a friend to most of us here. She was a sound utility and boom operator for Mark Ulano. They're actually a married couple, but she wrote a book. It's called Behind the Sound Cart. You can purchase it electronically, or you can purchase the hard copy. It is the Bible now on production sound, as far as being a utility boom operator or sound mixer, and how you interact with every department. If somebody's really trying to get into this industry, I would highly recommend that book. And then there's another electronic book called Down to the Wire by Thomas Popp, P-O-P-P. It is only an electronic book. You can find it on Apple Store, I believe. But those are two great guides. His book is about how to wire people. There's a whole art of wiring someone. And he really has done the only publication that's very thorough about how to do that. And if you want to get in touch with me, my email is Whit Norris, WHIT NORRIS @mac.com.
I'll go. So I'm Kevin SND at bellsouth.net. Just also want to talk about real quick that me and a couple of partners started a nonprofit in Miami. It's the After School Film Institute. We work with middle school and high school students on all aspects of making film. I'm in there because I'm a sound guy. My other partner is more of a director type. Another guy is more of a, puts it all together for us. And that's asfimiami.org. If anyone's out there and wants to support us, it's great. But that's what I have to say. Oh, one more thing, just with Whit, also just the Atlanta sound mixer for film and television, or is it television and film? That's on Facebook group, and that's pretty.
Yeah, it's
Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta sound mixer for television and film. You can find it, and your profile needs to have something about sound in it if you want to join. All right.
I also threw my channel information if you're interested in a little bit more information about what boom operators do. I have a whole training series called Building Better Boom Ops on my YouTube channel, which is Sound Speeds. Put links down in the chat for that. There's also a whole bunch of different aspects. And since you're AES, I'm sure you're familiar with Ray Rayburn. I did a over 3-hour conversation with Ray, and he talked about a lot of different things. As you know, Ray died earlier this year of COVID-19. So, but Ray was an amazing, brilliant man. If you're in the Audio Engineering Society, I'm sure you know who he is. And that information is available on the channel too. You can see that interview. Also, soundspeeds.us is my channel, and you can contact me through there.
Just asking.
I can be.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I can be reached at mderber107@gmail.com. I can also be reached at the Earl in East Atlanta. I like to drink beer. You can come and buy me a beer, and I'll talk about sound all day long. Thank you for having me. This
As long as the bottles are full.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. I can be reached on Instagram. I'll drop this in the chat. It's just my first name and last name, Nicholas Minter. Feel free to click the link, follow me. I think I sent this to panelists only. Let me send this to panelists and attendees. Here we go. Just drop that in the chat for you guys. Yeah, if you guys go and grab that beer with Matt, feel free to send me a message and tag me. I will come and join you guys.
I'll have him buy you a beer too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Kevin, you had you about to say something before we
that we were putting all this information into the chat.
Okay.
For our emails and stuff.
Okay, yeah, the chat is open to the panelists and the attendees. So if you're attending, please visit the chat if you want to write down this information or copy this information to contact our panelists. Again, AES ATL, thanks all of you guys for participating. You have a plethora of information that you've shared, and I know it's plenty more. And I'm going to be sitting down and chatting with you guys myself, because there's some things I need to learn and know, about you guys' experience. I'm going to sit down with Matt. We're going to drink a couple beers. So we're going to bank on that. Also, before we wrap, make sure you check us out. Our website is aesatl.org. And our social media services is AES Atlanta section on Facebook. Also, you get our YouTube station at AES Atlanta. Also, our IG page is AES_Atlanta or AES Atlanta. We also have these handy, fancy, nifty shirts. For $50, you can contact our treasurer, Ed Welly, at treasurer@aesatl.org. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone for attending. We're glad to have our panelists. And if you have any other questions for AES or our panelists, feel free to contact them at their email handles or contact us at aesatl.org. Everyone have a great evening, night, or day, depending on where you're from. And we thank you again.